Hi, everybody. My name's Esther. I'm an alcoholic. I'm so excited to see you all here. A year ago yesterday, we had our first meeting of the Seattle, the re-emergence of the Seattle group. We were so hopeful that it was going to be successful. Ralph was our very first speaker, and I think maybe that has something to do with why people turned out in the first place and why people are continuing to attend, because we are doing really well, even with Revive I-5. We're doing really well with the people that are willing to put up with that traffic. Ralph has a lot of little spots in my heart. Over the years, as I've been involved in general service, Ralph has kind of just always been there, and I have a lot of little stories about him. But for some reason, maybe because we're getting close to the assembly again, what I was thinking about recently was I was alternate delegate, and I was going to stand for delegate. And I was really, really nervous. I jumped, for anybody I jumped from DCM to alternate delegate. So I didn't have a lot of experience at the area level. So, so I was really, really nervous. And I remember I kind of just had like this kind of tunnel vision, and I really didn't see anything. I was just kind of just walking. And I don't know if where we were, but I remember you were sitting at a bar. So it might have been, we were at a hotel. I'm pretty sure it was probably like the lunch counter or something. I don't know. But I was just kind of walking by, and Ralph just stopped me and told me to sit down. And he just, Ralph's voice, it's just this calming, peaceful kind of voice. And he just asked me, "How are you doing?" And at the end said, "I think you're going to make a great delegate." And the election hadn't happened yet. He said, "I think you're going to make a great delegate." And I don't know if I did, but I'm so grateful for Ralph and just for calming me down, and just the service that he has given to me over the years and the different kind of things we've been involved with. So I'm just looking forward to hearing him again. Come on, Ralph.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ralph, and I'm an alcoholic. And it's nice to see you all. I think about some of the things that I've heard in AA that you've all heard them, and but I've sort of embraced a couple of things that seem to make a lot of sense to me. There's a woman speaking to the Empire Way group, my home group. And she says, now whenever anybody asks me, now that I'm sober, I answer them, I woke up this morning. Everybody's heard it. I woke up this morning and I sat on the edge of the bed. And I looked down at my left foot. And then I looked over at my right foot. And I didn't have a toe tag on either one. I knew it was going to be a great day. I thought, doggone it. And I use that talking to non-alcoholics. And I came to Alcoholics Anonymous through through the back door, and I met a lot of wonderful people. I was talking to my new best friends back there that are running the towboats. One's the first mate, and one's a deckhand. And I used to run a boat down in Westport. When our son was 8 years old, he and I had a job. I was in business here in Seattle and sober. And he and I started running a charter boat down there for salmon fishing. I became a licensed captain. And we did that together for the next 8 years until he turned 16. And then he found a new interest. And she was real pretty. And I haven't seen him since. I do see him. From time to time, often. We're very close. And I had a buddy, close friend. Matter of fact, we were partners in another boat. And he was a contractor. But he, on the quest to find what you and I have found in Alcoholics Anonymous, and he sent me a beautiful letter off the airplane flying back from India. He was in India with Sai Baba, whoever that was, looking for peace, looking for serenity. And he sent me a letter, and that's why I become the luckiest man. He says, I've been traveling all over the world. I've been to every speaker, every Sai Baba that I could find. And I'm flying back now to the States. And I realized everything that I've been looking for is in the Serenity Prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. And I think to myself, I've saved him myself the trip. And I think you and I are the luckiest people in the world. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about this. And I'll tell you how I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And again, my luck, again, when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was out on appeal bond. The last judge, had given me a year and a half in jail. I came back from the South Pacific, and I had married this incredibly beautiful woman. She had not seen me for 2 years. I had been gone for 2 years. And I came back hopeless, just an alcoholic. When I was out there in the Navy, I was court-martialed, sentenced to hard labor, locked up, and probably my favorite story, because there's being an alcoholic and have a disease and being dumber than a wooden watch, you've sort of compounded this thing. And they had charged me for helping a general court-martial prisoner to escape. We weren't going to escape. We're just going up the road to get drunk, and they had him on some very serious charges. And they caught us coming back onto the base, and they put him right back in the brig and and I had the cell next to him. And but over a period of time, they shipped him back to prison in the United States, and they were going to drop most of the charges against me. And captain, my division officer, had told me that they were going to drop most of the charges against me. They're going to let me coast out. I only had less than a year left to do in the Navy and on Guam. And I was going to go see the captain at 1 o'clock. But I've been drunk for about 2 days. And I went to my chief and said, "Hey, chief, listen, I'm going to mass today." He says, "Yeah." And I still remember, that's been what, 70 years ago or whatever it is, whatever it's been. He said, "Ralph, if I were you, I would shave that beard. This captain does not like facial hair." And he says, "Good luck. Uh, we've talked to the captain. They're going to let you coast out. They're not going to send you to penitentiary." I thought it was wonderful. I come back. That was at 8 o'clock in the morning at quarters. I was going to see the captain at 1 o'clock. And I'll tell you how bad an alcoholic I was and how dumb, stupid. I go down to a little place called Mindy's. I can still remember the name of the joint. And I sat there drinking straight whiskey until about 11:15. Then I'm going to go back and put on clean whites and go see the captain, thinking if I sleep for an hour, I'll be able to do this. The alcoholic thinking. And sure enough, I'm coming back through the gate, and the Marines stopped me, and they now arrested me for drunk driving. And so instead of seeing the captain, I'm down, the doctor is determining I'm drunk by his standards. And usually those things took about 15, 20 minutes, but this time, 2 weeks later, when I saw the captain, it took me I think about 6 minutes. And he awarded me a court-martial. And then I was court-martialed and sentenced to hard labor, and I went back into the brig. And I was a prisoner in Marine brig. And I finally came out, and I came back to the United States, got discharged, and married this unbelievably beautiful. We were engaged when I went over. When I went over, I was not that bad. I was drinking way too much. But when I came back, I was I was bad. I was in my alcoholism. And the police got me, and I got all into trouble. And finally, after about I got a free ride to the University of Washington. Got in there on the Korean GI Bill, and I had 4 full years free ride, plus a stipend, plus books, everything. And I lasted 3 weeks in the spring quarter of 1956, and the police got me again. And I dropped there after 20 days. I lasted 21 days at the University of Washington on a free ride. They got me again. And this time, the judge, they get tired of us. They get tired of my silliness and this crap. And I've been to the judge, and he gave me a year and a half in jail. And my wife is 5 months pregnant. And I was working for a guy by the name of Moses Dinner. You talk about lucky, and I'm talking about you have an opportunity to go out and tell your story about recovery and Alcoholics Anonymous. Please do it. Please do it. Tell it every opportunity you have. And I was working for a guy by the name of Moses Dinner and waiting, and he knew that I was an alcoholic, and I knew that I was probably going to go away for a while, but he liked me, and he hired me. And I was planning on working for Moses Dinner. But Moses Dinner had heard a guy by the name of Eric Bergman. And Eric Bergman was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. He'd been sober then 5 years, just about approximately 5 years. And he got sober in 1951. So this was now, we're coming up on 1956. And in Moses Dinner, you talked about luck. We all alcoholics. And I have about 3 or 4 mini sermons. And this is the first one coming up. And that is that we alcoholics have so much good luck from time to time. And the message is start taking advantage of the good luck that we have instead of screwing it up too, which we have a whole history. And anyhow, Moses Dinner hired me, and I was working for him. And it's about the second time I came in drunk at 12:30 noon when I was supposed to be there at 7 o'clock. He fired me, called Eric Bergman. And Eric Bergman, sober 5 years. He was involved in something. He sent somebody else to call on me. And he took me I met somebody from Old Renton. And Old Renton used to meet by the in the bartenders union hall. And I thought it was so fitting that I went to my first AA meeting ever in the bartenders union hall in Renton. And I came home and I got the great good fortune, being the luckiest guy you've ever met. This person told about Alcoholics Anonymous. And his name is Fred, and his wife's name is Marguerite. I can still remember his message to me. Now I'm 24 years old. And the first time that I had ever heard that you and I have a disease. My father died on the edge of Skid Road, alone, completely alone. There was 3 people at his funeral, not one relative except myself. There was a neighbor couple from Foster where we lived at the time before they were divorced. And he died alone. 3 people, not one relative at his funeral. And nobody ever told me that this was a disease. That was a long time ago. And I went to this is my first meeting, and I finished the drunk that I was on. I was sitting in an Alder Street Tavern, and at 6:30 in the morning, and then about 10:30, I looked at my watch, and I knew that there was something that was going to happen. I'm on my 3rd double muscatel and beer back. I've never had that good since ever in my life, and an unfiltered Camel cigarette. And I looked at my watch, and it was 10:30 on Saturday, September 1st, 1956. And I uttered an expletive familiar to everybody in here, if you watch television. And the second word is it. And I finished off my muscatel. And my final act of defiance, I ground out my cigarette on the floor. Not a very high-class place. Finished my beer. I went home. My wife was 5 months pregnant, working on a steam line. Real great husband. And I went to bed. When she came home at 3:30, I got up, woke up, and saw her. I said, "Darling, I've decided to quit drinking." And she was tired. She says, "I've heard that before. We'll see." And I fooled her. I fooled her. I fooled her. And I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's about 4 or 5 things I would just share with you that were so incredible. When I learned that it was a disease, this guy that's so hip, slick, and cool, I didn't know it was a disease. I didn't know that if I continued on the course that I was on, I was either going to die prematurely or go crazy. And they weren't scaring me. Well, look, after you've been in a Marine brig and you've been locked up, and I'm at that time I'm on the street because the judge let me out on appeal bond, and I knew I was going to have to go back in for a year and a half in jail. She says, "We'll see," and I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And one of the things they told me, Eric was just one of these incredible people. I'll tell you a little bit more about him. Eric Bergman, he said, "Ralph, the thing when you come to Alcoholics Anonymous, make meetings the most important single thing in your life. Then it's anticipated that you and I will come. We will come back and we will experience a sort of a return to normalcy. And we'll maybe get a job, go back to work. We'll start living like a human being. And AA meetings are not the most important single thing in your life. Maybe 2 years, 3 years, and I don't know, it happened to me about 2, 3 years. But he said, from that day on, the most important single thing in your life is your sobriety. More important than any other single thing. And every now and then I had that brought home to me. I was sponsoring a new guy. A guy contacted me. He said, "You still in AA?" "Yeah, sure. Yeah, I go to AA." Still active. I had been done by that time a few years. "You want to go?" And he says, "Yeah." And his wife had given him an ultimatum. And he says, "Yeah." And I went to pick him up, take him to Empire Way and other places. And one Wednesday night, I picked him, and he'd been sober 6 months. And I said, knocked on the door, and I ready to go. And he says, "No, I'm not going tonight. Matter of fact, I'm not going anymore. My wife told me I don't have to hang around with you bums anymore now that I've been sober for 6 months. I'm sober. I don't need to hang around with you bums." That's the first time anybody had ever called me that in my sobriety. And I thought, damn, doggone it, that stung. And I said, "Oh, nuts." Okay, I said, "Hey, listen, I wish you a lot of luck. Listen, if you need me, call me." And I didn't hear from him. About 4 or 5 months later, he called me from over in Okanagan. He was living in government housing. He found a new love, and he'd gone back to drinking. He lived on the reservation there, and we talked a little bit. And he says, "Are you can come back to Alcoholics Anonymous?" "No, I'm getting close. So I'm getting close." Next time he called me from the Fry Hotel. Anybody in Seattle knows where the Fry Hotel is. It's down at 3rd and Yesler. And a lot of places you want to end up. Fry Hotel is not one of them. And he and his betrothed was living there in the Fry Hotel. And you have one room, and it has a bed and has a kitchenette. And it's got everything is in one room in the Fry Hotel. And I went down to visit him. I said, "Are you ready?" And he said, "No, I'm getting close." And the next time I was in contact with him, the obituary was about 1 inch long. And The the message to me is, please, please, don't listen to anybody else. Don't listen to. Don't convince you that you have to. You don't want to hang around us bums any longer. And I have to tell you, but we sometimes we do things in Alcoholics Anonymous are kind of kind of silly, and I wanted to share with you just a couple of things. And I'm playing for a cheap laugh. Um, when I talk about, I was back in New York, and I'd been with Bill W. A number of times, and somebody here had saw me someplace at one of the internationals, and Bill, when he was still alive, he was uh, he spoke at every one of those. They held them every 5 years, and anyhow, I was back there at this meeting, at this dinner, in with Bill W. And he bids AA hold on to traditions. And I'm not going to, no sermonette on traditions, except that there's an incredible message, and Bill invariably talked about, Bill Duggal invariably, and he talked there at this dinner, and he talked about, he said, bids AA hold on to traditions. And going down, there was a person from back east, a woman from back east, and I was one of the speakers with Bill W. And that's not the punchline. That's not even the point of the story. That's just something that happened. But my sponsor, the godfather of our oldest daughter, Eric Bergman, was sitting in the audience. He was a trustee. I was a delegate. That's why we were there with Bill W. And he and I were walking on this beautiful April evening, walking into Times Square. And after that dinner that night, and he stopped. He just stopped. And he wasn't a man of movement. You know, he just stopped. He turned to me. He says, "Do you realize what just happened tonight?" I said, "No. What are you talking about?" He says, "You and Bill W. were on the same program." I was wondering. I didn't think much about it, Eric, but I'll probably find an opportunity to fit it into the conversation. And I just did. And Eric, having my sponsor, the Godfather, is whatever happened to that little girl that was born. My wife was pregnant with her. Well, she's a grandmother now, and she was born 4 months after I got sober, so I know she'll be, she's a grandmother, and I keep trying. I kind of forget how long I've been sober, but I said, "How old is Sherry?" I know how old Sherry is, and I think a couple other things I want to talk about that oh yeah, thank you very much. That I want to make the thing that I realized, I had a disease, no cure. There's just no cure, and when I think about my alcoholism, and probably the worst ever in my alcoholism was I woke up often, but this one time I woke up in jail and I didn't know where I was, and I didn't know how I got there. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. There was a guy sweeping outside my cell, and I had no idea why I was in jail. And a guy, trustee, I said, "What time is it?" He says, "It's 2 o'clock." He says, "Do you know?" I said, "Do you know why I'm in here?" He says, "No, no, I don't know." And with the tone in his voice, "I don't care either." He was sweeping. He was a trustee. He'd see a lot of my kind of guys coming through there. And he says, at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, that door down, you see that door at the end of the hall? I said, "Yeah." He says, "They're going to open that door. They're going to take you in there. And they're going to tell you why you're charged." And I still didn't know why I was in jail. And I got to tell you, I got from 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock to lay there and worry about it. I said, "Do you have a?" He was smoking. I said, "Do you have an extra cigarette?" Well, and there, when you're in the joint, wherever you are, cigarettes are very. He says, "No, I don't have an extra cigarette." I said, "Okay, I got it." And I lay there for 6 hours trying to figure out why I was in there. I, the last I remember, I was down in Nisqually Flats. I was going to go to Los Angeles. I was married. I was going to run away. I was going to go to Los Angeles, drunk, been drunk. And that's the last thing I remember, coming up out of Nisqually Flats, and it started snowing. I never heard. And when I got into the courtroom, they said they had found me asleep in my car. And you said, "How lucky you didn't kill somebody." And I have to tell you, these guys, when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, now you got to remember, I was awfully young. And these guys, these men adopted me, these incredible guys. That's why I get so choked up when I come in here, because one of the man that used to run our inner group, his name was Ken Couts. When he ever introduced himself, he introduced himself as a Skid Row Wino Indian. He was a member of the Puyallups. And he and I logged thousands of miles. These guys, they called me Junior, because I was back early on, years ago, if you were under 40, you're too young. If you're over 60, you're screwed because you're over the hill. You're not worth, Well, I was 24 years old. And these guys, they didn't hear that line. And they took me every place, to Walla Walla, took me to McNeil Island, took me to Monroe, took me to assemblies, took me every place, and sort of adopted me. And my great friend, Ken Couts, the Skid Row Wino, he was an authority on Alcoholics Anonymous, and he was our manager, and he wore a suit, and he was I logged tens of thousands of miles in the back seat of the car listening to him. You talk about a lucky guy to learn about the disease of alcoholism, learn about how Bill W. wrote, and who he used as a resource to come up with this incredible program of Alcoholics Anonymous. So anyhow, I was fortunate that, and another thing that happened to, one time when we went to Walla Walla, to the state penitentiary, we'd go into minimum security, then the maximum security, and I was gone. And you talk about the luckiest guy in the world, because that woman that says, "We'll see," she had the most wonderful parents. They let me go to Walla Walla. They let me go to Monroe. There were some times I was gone every weekend. We had our daughter Sherry, and we had a daughter Cindy, and we had a son John. And my in-laws took care of my wife and our children when I'm off in Alcoholics Anonymous, because for years I made Alcoholics Anonymous, the program, the most important single thing in my life. And these in-laws who loved me beyond comprehension, loved me and helped to take care of our children. Now those all children, and Sherry's grandmother, Cindy's going to become a grandmother in about 6 weeks, her little sister, and we survived. And when your kids call you every day, you know that you're awfully, awfully fortunate. And so anyhow, I ended up getting sober with the help of all these dear friends in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I would think about the great, great, great messages that I had that when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, Eric says for the first couple of years, make Alcoholics Anonymous, the meetings, the most important single thing in your life, more important than your family, more important to your job, more important than any other single thing. Then I'm repeating intentionally. And then there's a return to normalcy. And then things come back into a proper perspective. And you lead a normal life. And you can, I ended up, the guys got me into the police farm for alcoholics. I didn't have to do it. The worst thing with us men alcoholics, if you end up a lot of time, I had a year and a half. The judge had given me a year and a half. He's just tired of my silliness. And the one thing you didn't want to do, you didn't want to do it on the steel. And that was an acronym. It's a way the jail cells for alcoholics, they're all steel, glass and steel. And when I was in police farm, you had a bunk, and you had a mattress, and you had one sheet and a blanket. I ended up doing most of my time on the police farm for alcoholics, and I didn't have to do it downtown on the steel, because on the steel there was no mattress, there was no sheets, there was no pillow, there was no nothing, no cigarettes, there wasn't. You were doing it and under rather adverse circumstances. And I ended up in the police farm for alcoholics, and did my time. And you know, when you're an alcoholic, you get used to doing crap. You're just doing stuff that would just destroy normal people. But I got so that my father-in-law, I married his only beautiful daughter, and he used to drive me to the police farm because I got on work release, and he would drive me on Friday night, and I'd go into the police farm, leave my wife and daughter, they'd look after them. Then he would come down and pick me up because I couldn't drive. He'd pick me up on Sunday night, bring me home so I could go to work. And I was working then on work release. And I'm telling you, the luckiest guy in the world that my in-laws who took care of my wife and my daughter, then another daughter, and our son, until I got my program together in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. What happened? And I got squared away, and I got a job and became very, very, very. His interest in his faith in me was returned because his daughter and I have been married, I guess, well, since April 1st, 1955 to now. What is that? How many years is that? Huh? Anybody, mathematicians here? We've been married, and when I left to come here to see you, and she was resting, and she said, she got up and says, "Love you. Have a good time. Have a good time with your friends tonight." And we've survived all that silliness, and I could go on and on and on. I never did go back to the University of Washington. As I left 4 years on the table, I ended up teaching at the University of Washington for 5 years, one course a quarter. You never went back to quarter? No, but I couldn't make it as a student, but I made it as a teacher. And that's Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was fired when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, ended up sober, and I started with a little company, and it grew and grew and grew and grew, and we had 23 branches in the United States and Canada, and I ended up as a president of the company. And I say that because now I want to talk to newer people. Hey, just because you screwed up doesn't mean you don't have ability. There's something about some alcoholics. They have everything. They're intelligent. They have everything except common sense when they're drinking. And you get them sober, and they make incredible managers. They're just, the whole world opens for them, and in sobriety. I have to tell you, when I say that I'm the luckiest guy in the world, there's no question in about anybody's mind that coming from here. My father was 51 years old when he died alone. When they called me from the Hollywood Hotel on First Avenue to come and get his personal effects. After the funeral, I went and picked up all of his worldly belongings. They fit into a Safeway bag, half full. You see, you saved me from that. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. Thank you, and thank you. Good to be with you.